as I keep going through these old Disney movies, I'm just like amazed at the stories we used to tell kids in contrast with what we tell them now. So this one, I know this is a legacy story, Sleeping Beauty, but like the what Disney did with this, it took a few liberties, but for the most part, what Disney did with this is really fantastic. I actually really, really like this one. So we're gonna watch this now and let's talk about it. So here's the trailer. 1959. This movie came out in 1959. It was a fairly well-known story at the time, obviously, from French literature.
Sleeping Beauty, sparkling with colorful spectacle, brimming with gay music and delightful new songs, filled with fascinating new Disney characters.
So, obviously, as we'll talk
You'll
about
meet
more
lovely
here in a
Princess
minute,
Briar Rose.
Briar Rose, or Aurora before the curse, obviously is to represent like feminine virtue and feminine beauty. We see this reflected like with really everything around her. Everything she comes near becomes like bright and sunny and beautiful. And the animals have no context outside of their dynamic, like with her. They have no place in the story outside their interaction with her. So we can draw a lot from them in reference to her character. So what we see here is like all the animals like nice features, they're bright colors, they're round, they're bouncy, they're happy. Like everything she comes near, she has this positive influence on. Let's go continue here.
Wonder why each little bird has a someone to sing to.
And then what's interesting here with Philip,
Handsome Prince Phillip.
so you'll see here,
Samson,
he's handsome,
his noble steed.
but you'll see even what happens right here. There's like an element of him. He's still kind of, in some ways, almost kind of boyish. He hasn't really grown up yet. The context of this story, they're still quite young.
Delightful fairies who
She's
ever wafted
approaching
a
her
magic
16th
wand.
birthday.
Flora,
He hasn't proven that he's a noble yet, that he's
Fauna,
worthy of like peak feminine
Merryweather.
beauty. He hasn't proven his worthiness to his kingdom yet.
You'll share the fun with King Stephen and King
The
Hubert.
the two fathers are like praising this union since childbirth.
And you'll see Maleficent work her wondrous witchcraft.
Stand back, you fools!
The fine art of animation becomes magnificent entertainment as Walt Disney brings one of the world's favorite stories to the screen. It's filled with magical fun. It's spectacular in its beauty. And there's adventure to excite every emotion.
See even the shield and the cross.
No, it cannot be!
So, this story, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's a very, it's a legacy story. It's been told for a very long time. Disney took a few liberties, but broadly, we'll be staying with the Disney timeline because that's the one that we're looking at right now today, or the Disney storyline. It's the one we're looking at. It doesn't take major liberties from the traditional story, at least in my view. So, what you have is on the day that Aurora is born, you have these two kings that are really excited. They're planning on marrying their children. Now, the one kind of interesting thing here is we really squirm at this idea today, obviously in our society, but it's kind of funny because it seems like almost the dads knew something the kids didn't know yet, because in the end they end up together anyways. They somehow were this perfect match, as it turns out. But So I also think this movie shows the first time we see like a feminist portrayed in film. I think Maleficent is like peak feminist character. She's completely obsessed with power. She very, very clearly does has shown as not having any interest in beauty. It's like harsh angles, dark colors. Everything she comes near becomes more ugly, and she's got like this giant cast of like dysgenic male simps that kind of like follow her around and do her bidding, even though she's, you know, very, very verbally abusive to them, you know, showing that she's like stunning and brave. So this is at the beginning of the film when Aurora is born, and then she approaches. Now listen here, this is interesting. Look at like what she immediately notices about her surroundings.
Quite a glittering assemblage, King Stephen. Royalty, nobility, the gentry, and... how quaint. Even the rabble.
So,
I really felt quite distressed at not receiving an invitation.
You weren't wanted.
Hillary Clinton-esque statement there, right? Even the rabble's included. Why wasn't I? You know, obviously she wasn't wanted there. As you see, look at here, dark angles, and every animal in this film is only shown in context in relation to the human it's most associated with. So we see like with Prince Philip, there's this noble steed. We see around Aurora, literally every animal is like round features, bright colors, happy characters. Very, what we see in Maleficent, it's a raven. One other interesting thing is there's no backstory on Maleficent. This is actually important. There's no backstory because she represents evil. Like the character is the embodiment of evil, and I think without them knowing, they created something that's like peak feminism. I mean, it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio there, anyways. So what you have is this character that we don't have a backstory on. Like, and it would have resonated at the time why they didn't need one. She's the embodiment of evil. You don't need a backstory. In fact, like there's a statement later in the movie that's great. That's that evil may die so good can endure. There's this like knowing, understanding that good and evil can't exist in the same place. And we don't really need to know root causes of evil because, you know, just like truth and goodness is objective, so is evil. So all that we need to know about evil is that we want to destroy it. So what's interesting here is like it doesn't tell us the backstory because you don't need it. How funny would it be if like we fast forwarded like 70 years and Disney like felt that it needed to retcon a story about Maleficent, like the evil character, to like explain root causes as to her behavior. That'd be pretty funny, right? Okay, so she shows up on the day Aurora's born. She's angry a number of things here. She sees there's going to be this union that's going to be celebrated by all the kingdoms and the royalty, and everybody's very, very happy to see this child born and this union of kingdoms, and she's very like bothered by this. So what she does is she puts a curse on the child, saying that the child's going to prick its wheel and prick its finger on a spinning wheel. That spinning wheel just represents time and likely coming of age. So as she comes of age, and we see her represented as 16 years old in this film, so that seems to kind of match. She's coming of age. She's going to, you know, fall in this deep sleep. I think in the book she was going to die, and the fairy godmothers were able to mitigate the spell to where she would just fall into a deep sleep. So she casts a spell. She's going to prick her finger. So they make this effort to save her. They can get her to her 16th birthday. They'll have past the period of hazard with the spell. So they send her away to live in the forest. And we're going to get to see a little bit more about the Maleficent character here. As he said, she's, again, I think, a perfect representation of like feminism embodied. But we see here, this is great. She's got like all these like dysgenic male, very clear male represented figures. Everything around her is like dark colors, ugly. You know, she's verbally abusive to them, and they very clearly are like just simping, trying to like earn her approval. It's like, you know, legion of male feminists. So you've got like these like dysgenic figures that she's sending out to find Aurora, because Aurora's gone hidden with the fairy godmothers, and she wants to like find her to make sure that her evil spell can become fulfilled. So what we see here, now we get to see a little bit of the character of Aurora. As we said, Aurora is representation of just femininity and feminine beauty, feminine virtue, and we see this reflected in that everything that she comes near is like left better. Every when she comes near is uplifted. We see all the characters that just want to surround her and be in her orb, and contrast this with the characters that want to be around, like, you know, raging feminist Maleficent. And if you think I'm wrong, okay, the joke about Disney making retconning the character Maleficent, very obviously, I'm sure you know now, like Disney did that. It made a Maleficent to explain like root causes as to why she was evil. And so it's funny because it's very celebrated as like a feminist film. So again, I identified her as a feminist in this film from 70 years ago. Disney very clearly did as well. That's why Disney like made that character, and it's generally praises that. So it's not just me. Whether they know it or not, they low key like that's how they feel.
I'm Flora and Fauna and Merriweather. They never want me to meet anyone.
So you just see again like the characters around her. You see the landscape that she's in. It's well lit. It's a beautiful landscape. The creatures are very clearly affected in this positive way. Everything that she comes near is left better and more beautiful. And then of course, you know, this prince arrives, and as we said earlier, it represents masculinity, but in this like early stage, he hasn't proven himself yet. He hasn't proven that he's like capable of defending his kingdom. He hasn't proven his honor. He hasn't proven that he's a noble as of yet. Now, so we see that kind of goofiness where he's riding his noble steed very clearly, and they're very this clear match for each other. But you know, he falls off the horse. He's kind of figuring it out.
But don't you remember? We've met before.
We have?
Well, of course. You said so yourself. Once upon a dream. I know you.
So here's this thing. He's like doing this whole courtship, and she's pretending to like to slip away, showing like modesty, because again, peak feminine virtue. And so she's like trying to slip away, and they eventually decide, I think, that they're gonna like meet up later because it is her birthday. But when she goes back to the cabin, the fairy godmothers tell her, hey, we're actually taking you back to the kingdom. Now, this creates an interesting dynamic because now she's distraught because she hears she's going to have to marry this prince. That's actually like her chosen destiny, and she's going to have to marry this prince, and she's kind of bummed out about it. At the same time, the prince goes back and tells his father, like, hey, I've met this woman. I'm going to marry her. And it's interesting because his father is like, no, you're not going to do that. You know, you've got to follow this tradition we set. And he's like, well, I've met this woman. This is what I want to go forward with. And the father kind of accepts it. He's not like entirely thrilled, but he's kind of, he actually still, there seems to be some opposition. It's really not till after he's proven himself that you see like the father truly accept it. Like he still hasn't really proven himself at this stage, and he's telling his father he's disappointed. And so he goes out back to meet her, and at the same time, so he goes to meet her in the woods, Aurora, Briar Rose. And at the same time that she's taken back to the castle. And so she's there at the castle, and this is when we see Maleficent kind of slip in and try to fulfill her plan. And here's where, this is my favorite part of this whole film is, so Maleficent shows up, puts her aura out, and look what it immediately does to Briar Rose. It takes her from beautiful to like having this like greenish tint. Like her hair is like this off greenish color, and I think this part like was just so awesome because it's literally what you see everywhere right now. Like this is deeply ingrained into current like feminist culture, right? Like you have the Skittles hair or like the green hair, and it's not like this edgy hipster like kind of cool green. It's not meant to be that. It's very clearly just meant to be ugly. Like usually it's really poorly done and it's just meant to be ugly. And the hair is like a woman's glory. This is even like stated biblically. This is something a woman was given to like represent and show beauty. And it's no surprise, of course, because literally everything that feminism touches, it wants to make ugly and gross and less attractive and wants to make it unpleasant. And so here, it's no surprise, what we see is like it actually makes her this off hue, like greenish hue, and this like greenish shade of hair. And, you know, obviously you can imagine what's going to happen. She's under this trance and gets led up to the castle where she pricks her finger and falls under the spell. Now, at the same time, to make sure that her spell stays forever, the Maleficent goes out to the woods and takes her simps and goes out to like set a trap for Prince Phillip that she is not aware is actually the prince. She thinks he's just a commoner. And watch like how like thrilled she is to find out that he's actually like of like noble status. This is where we see, like we say, like she has this very clear obsession with power and power dynamics and wants to like make everything that's beautiful less attractive, everything harsh or ugly, the hard angles less beautiful. And look what happens when she comes in contact with Prince Philip. She springs his trap, and what's she find out?
Well, this is a pleasant surprise. I set my trap for a peasant, and lo, I catch a prince.
Immediately, though, she's out of it. She has this like brief moment that like, because like that she kind of like laughs and then immediately is like back out of it, right? Back into her state of just loathsome anger. And so she takes him into the castle. She like mocks him wanting to rescue the girl. And what we see is the three fairy godmothers come to his rescue. Now, this is interesting. They clearly have like some fairly formidable skills, but they don't make an assault on the Maleficent themselves. Possibly the three combined seem fairly formidable, but you know what? They don't, because it's not their role. It's not their job. They, again, are also a representation of feminism, and you see here, femininity, and you see it maybe in a more like even elder, nurturing sense, and but the same like application of making things more pleasant and more beautiful that they're around, having this like phenomenal power to take things that are and make them more hospitable. And what happens here is they come, they spring them, and hang on here, this is worth noting. This is hilarious. This is made the best part of like the whole film.
Wait, Prince Philip. The road to true love may be barred by still many more dangers, which you alone will have to face.
You alone.
So arm thyself with this enchanted shield of virtue and this mighty sword of truth. For these weapons of righteousness will triumph over evil.
So, it was known that all he was going to need was his shield of virtue and the sword of truth. And I think this is funny. It's only 70 years ago, and this is why you hear me often talk about, like, it's going to take a generation to fix some of the problems that we have right now. And some of this is just like our very clear cultural understanding of that which is right and righteous. And this concept right here, like he has a shield of virtue. That's what defends you from evil. It's establishing your shield of virtue. And he has a sword of truth. Like, ironically, that's all you actually need to defeat evil is the sword of truth. Like, literally all you need is truth. And maybe we've seen this portrayed no way better than in very recently with Matt Walsh when he would ask, like, what is a woman? And you see, like, the entire like trans ideology collapses under this one question where you're like forced to submit to objective truth. And so he's outfitted with these two weapons, and then you see he goes like escape this castle. Now, what's interesting here is like as he goes to escape, and I don't know if it's worth the risk of trying to portray it. Let me see if I can get you just like one little bit. Okay, so he's having like rocks thrown at him and arrows, and as we said, he's gonna have to go solve this. He alone is the one that can fix it. And and it's his time now. He has to prove his worth. He has to use his shield of virtue and sword of truth and go prove that he is worthy and rescue his kingdom. But here's what happened. This is interesting, as you see yet again, the fairy godmothers have actually some power, and it's interesting that, like, I think to make it work in the new Maleficent, spoiler alert, yeah, they did make it, like we talked about, but as I'm sure you know by now, but to make it work in the new Maleficent, they had to make them like goofy and way underpowered. They had to make them like really, really, really ineffective. And in this film, they're not necessarily that, but they clearly acknowledge that this is the prince's role. This is his job. And so here's this funny look. There's like this volley of arrows fired at him. And so though it's his role to defeat the evil, look at like their contribution towards helping or saving. So they take their capability, this feminine nature, and are able to take something that's like harsh or evil or ugly, not necessarily evil, but ugly, and turn it into something that's now like beautiful. So he escapes, he leaves the castle, and he is heading to the kingdom to rescue his girl. And
Hurry, Phillip!
of course, Maleficent finds out, and she's not happy about it because, again, she would hate love, she would hate a union, she would hate an actual marriage. There's no clear portrayal here that she has any, desire for love or relationship or children. And what we see, so she casts a spell.
Round Stefan's castle, cast my spell!
Fills it with briars, makes it just generally like less pleasant, less ideal, peak feminism. And as Prince Philip is still working his way, she decides that she is going to have to come and, stop him herself.
It cannot be!
So look at even like the verbiage here is great. And look what happens to the fairy godmothers. Watch this part. So look.
Now shall you deal with me, O prince, and all the powers of hell!
Right? I like the cross. So what you saw there is like real briefly is the one fairy godmother went to go act, and the other two held her back. Like realized like no, this is his job. This is what he is supposed to do. This is what he is. This is what he is called to do. This is what he's been designed to do. This is his role now. He needs to take his shield of virtue, his sword of truth, and he needs to go save his kingdom and go get the girl. So he proceeds. Oh yeah, there we go. There's the part where they hold her back. And like I said, I think it's a little more important than we realize. Like no, this isn't their role. This is his role. And so he has like this fight with the dragon.
Sword of truth, fly swift and sure, that evil die and good endure.
Right? May the sword of truth fly swift and pure, that evil may die and good endure. Again, this is important because there wasn't anything else that needed to be known about the backstory here. Like evil needs to be driven out. And I mean, obviously, CC, like boom, he defeats the dragon, and then of course he goes and gets the girl. But this is what's interesting. Again, the spell passed by evil empress Feminist has made her again look ugly. The green hair, I don't know why the green hair. Like it's so funny to me because it's so like on point, right? It's so like culturally exactly on point. You see it when you go out, and you know immediately what it is. When you see it, you know what it is, and like. You know what party that person likely voted for at like literally a 99.9% like success rate, and you know like most of what you need to know just by looking and seeing like, oh yeah, this whole green hair. And again, it's not like meant to be like, it's not like meant to be attractive. It's literally just meant to be ugly. It's meant to be ugly. That's what it's trying to portray. So that's what's funny is like this impact of evil made things more ugly, and then look, virtue, the virtue of love and this union of these two restores that. And because again, beauty is something that's supposed to be celebrated. So the kingdom comes out to celebrate, and then there's kind of this funny part where, like, again, the father, after his son having like saved the kingdom, he's kind of like, well, you know, you've made your choice in who you want to be with. I'm gonna respect that. And it seems like more so to take place after he's like slain the dragon, right? You know, he's okay. You're a man. You've proven your worth. And then it just so happens that it's like Sleeping Beauty. So, you know, it's a win-win. So now the whole like kingdom is happy, is thrilled. And what you see take place is, and one other thing. While Sleeping Beauty was asleep, to keep the kingdom in the exact same place, the fairy godmothers made everybody else like fall asleep. That's why it was up specifically to the prince. Everyone else was in a slumber, in a sleep. There's like a large, let's say, like current moment kind of parallel with that. And so what's interesting here is they show, so you now get this union, you're going to have this couple, and what you see is like a virtuous union that's supposed to transcend just you. Like marriage is something that has like a spiritual biblical meaning as well. And look, you see even like their union, their marriage are going to transcend even just that kingdom. That's why you see it's funny they're portrayed up here in the sky, because it's both meant to represent that this is going to be this like ever after, this everlasting bond, but also on top of it, it's this union is likely going to create children and create like a long-lasting impact that outlives specifically just them. So what if Disney wanted to go back, because they have no ability to create new timeless stories, and they're going to go retcon things that were known evil in the past and try to contrast them. Now the truth. After 70 years, you're now going to find out the truth.
Bring her to me.
I know you're there. Don't be afraid.
I am not afraid.
Then come out.
Then you'll be afraid.
All the other fairies fly. And why don't you?
I had wings once. They were strong, but they were stolen from me. There is evil in this world. Hatred and revenge.
Hate. It's just hate. Revenge. So, all right, enough of that. But it's funny. So in this film, she's like exposed to what's supposed to be the parallel of like a date rape drug, and has her power or kind of virginity, if you will, but the left wouldn't use that because they don't, chastity isn't a big thing for them. So it's just like she has this special aspect or attribute of her stolen with this whole like date rape experience, through date rape drug, and she's drugged by like the king, and that's the root cause. It's a root cause. It's why the left's entirely obsessed always with root causes. You hear it all the time. Well, I can't say that. It's not. It is when it's beneficial, but largely when it comes to aspects of like truth or anything that's like specifically sin related, it's can't imagine that mankind is accountable for its sin and for its actions, and we just assumes we're all like a biological mass that's just shaped by your surrounding conditions and not necessarily accountable for what takes place thereafter. And so it's no surprise we go forward 70 years. We have this fantastic story of Disney. There was no backstory because you didn't need one, because there's evil. Evil must die for good to endure. Because again, these two things can't exist in the same space. We even know this like theologically. It's why there's a heaven and a hell. The two things can't exist in the same space. And so it's interesting, like in our stories, we try to tell stories where there's like ambiguity, but the reality is you can't leave the vacuum. There's going to be one, and there's going to be the other. And it's not a matter of root causes. You're still accountable for the choices you make and the actions you've taken. So it's just really funny that we go forward, and Disney, and I don't think this is the first film they've done this with, right? There's a couple others. I think they recently did with Cruella and Cruella DeVille. I mean, like Cruel Devil, but like they have to retcon. They have to retcon these characters to retell the story from a different perspective. And this is just so peak like postmodern. It's very like, a standpoint epistemology, that your individual standpoint somehow has an element of truth that maybe another standpoint doesn't have. And this isn't just a view this isn't a view that's real. So to go back, just to wrap it up. So Sleeping Beauty, as a woman, as you embrace femininity, what you see is that literally everything that you come around is left better. What you come near is going to be left more beautiful. There's going to be things left with more grace. And we also see this with the fairy godmothers, that this virtue is timeless. This isn't just, only represented like in youth. This is a virtue that carries with you through the remainder of your life and has capabilities for like the strength of it even to grow. Whereas, and then we also see in the contrast character with Philip that's supposed to be masculine, and though there might be a point at which he had a more like youthful or boyish behavior, in order to graduate or ascend, become respected by the nobles in his kingdom, he is going to have to, pick up the shield of virtue and the sword of truth and go kill the dragon. And then he gets the girl. That's the funny thing. Look at this. We get to see the chronology here of how this is supposed to take place. So pursue virtue, live with truth. Go get the girl. Slay the dragon, get the girl. That's the lesson. So again, another great one of Disney. I'm going to be disappointed when I get through all these old ones. Luckily, I've got a handful more to go. I'm really, I think it looks like around like late 80s, early 90s is when we're going to see like a big shift in these films. But for surely these early ones in like the 50s and 60s have such great timeless virtues and great values. And so this has been really, really enjoyable getting to review these, and I hope you guys have liked it. So have a good one.